Has Sunny Hostin met her match? I think you'll agree why I say that, because Stephen A. Smith completely demolished her race hustling on the Democrat election loss by saying one brutal truth: Kamala Harris was simply a terrible candidate, and you have to see Sunny's face in response as she realizes there's no room left to play identity politics with Stephen. Watch this incredible moment before I tell you more about it.
There's two C words that are incredibly important in America. Capitalism is one. Competition is another, because it's a metaphor for capitalism in a lot of people's eyes. Because you were inserted, even though you were the vice president and it was the Biden-Harris administration, you had folks who are independent. I'm not talking about those on the right, and I'm not talking about those on the left, just independents, who said, wait a minute, she didn't experience the primary either. And the last time we saw her in a primary was 4 years ago, and she didn't even make it to Iowa. They used that as an excuse to point to her level of inexperience. Then you got the war in Russia and Ukraine. You got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that stuff. And you had Trump using codes. Look, do you want her? Where is she? Where's the interviews? Where's she showing herself? Where's the tough questions? Where's the interrogation? And he leaned on certain things. And you knew people were going to gravitate to that, because right now, as divided as our country is, fear comes associated with that. And because that fear was there, he fed off of it.
Yeah.
And people bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And that's why he's the president.
I find it incredible that someone from the world of sports journalism is able to make more sense than this stale 3-decade-old panel on The View. And there's something that Stephen A. Smith said here that should make the Democrats take a long, hard look in the mirror after the election. It's simple. In response to a right-wing populist like Donald Trump, they put up the most obvious establishment puppet and talking head in the form of Kamala Harris. That was destined to fail from day one. By the way, subscribe to the channel because you can't miss the truth bombs we drop every day. A poll from Suffolk University in the last 2 weeks before the election revealed the shaky grounds the Democratic Party stood on, with 57% of the electorate believing Kamala Harris just hasn't done enough to explain what her policy positions even are. She ran on instead, but forgot that it has almost become impossible to create a left-wing populist movement on race or gender anymore, because that's not what modern America cares about. Now, even if you don't want to give Stephen A. Smith too much credit for speaking against Kamala's narrow identity politics, since Stephen himself often speaks in those terms, you have to realize that was at least brave enough to speak the truth to his party that the top of the Democratic ticket needs to go.
What do you identify as what Democrats got wrong? And it seems like you agree Biden maybe should have stepped aside sooner.
He definitely should have stepped aside. I said it a year ago. I was on camera, everybody was getting on me. I said it a year ago, you need to step aside.
You took some heat.
You remember, though, that he said, does everybody remember he originally said he was just going to do it for 4 years?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I brought up.
Right. And did you think that once you know who stepped in, he said, well, there's nobody, we don't have anybody?
Well, the point is that it's not about who you're going up against when you know you're not what you used to be. And see, this is where covering sports puts me at a distinct advantage. I cover people every day where it's time for you to go, but you're holding on and you don't want to leave. People who cover the world of sports are accustomed to seeing that all the time. And so now here you are, to answer your question directly, you are the left, you leaned, and you were a prisoner to the extreme left in a lot of people's eyes. Well, guess what? Most of America doesn't operate on the fringes. Whether you're left or you're right, you're relatively centrist. You believe in compromise, negotiation, working with one another. Nobody gets to get everything they want. The problem is those on the fringes continuously push for you to get everything you want. They're not about getting things done. They're about getting their way. And if they're not going to get their way, they're about complaining and griping about it, because they understand that when you are operating based off of grievance, that's usually what provokes you to get to the polls. And that is why they don't mind feeling aggrieved and displaying and disseminating that kind of message, because they know people are going to gravitate to that. And as a result, that might get them to the polls, you thinking you're going to get what you want as a result of it. And in this particular case, the Republicans were right.
Trust me, this conversation in hindsight of the election results has given a lot of people the right to say, I told you so.
A deep sip from a very tall glass of I told you so.
One of those names from the media may be Stephen A. Smith, but I think there's an even bigger name from within the Democratic Party. that was absolutely wrecked earlier this year for daring to suggest that Biden's re-election bid was the wrong decision. That name was Dean Phillips, whose entire Democratic primary run was to make the point that Joe Biden needs to go before he does more damage. And in response, Dean was sidelined in the party and called every name in the book from pariah to traitor to agent of chaos. CNN ran an entire op-ed against him for daring to fall out of the party establishment line, calling his campaign chaotic and negative. In the end, Joe Biden's candidacy proved to be a plane that has lost all engines, and the rest of the party had to ditch him before he crashed. Stephen A. Smith came out nearly half a year ago to scream this warning to the Democrats, but to no avail.
For Joe Biden, if you're listening, Mr. President, there's no shame in stepping away because you acknowledge you just don't have it anymore. Not on that kind of platform. But that's just me. Joe Biden, as far as I'm concerned, needs to step away. Kamala Harris needs to be inserted immediately as the candidate to go up against Trump, or get somebody else up in there. Get somebody else up in there. Because what we saw last night, Trump will be the next president of the United States of America come January 2025.
But as we saw, it was too late, and I think you can throw that at the feet of the moral and intellectual high-handedness of the Democrats. Stephen A. Smith himself, being a person of color as well as Democratic, renders a lot of the usual attack vectors useless, and that's why you see Sunny Hostin with this incredible condescending statement about the common American.
If you're out there busting your tail and make ends meet and to pay your bills, and you're going to work every day, and you got a family to take care of, and you're in New York City, you're getting stuck 2 hours of your day, you're stuck in traffic. You understand? You got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. You don't have time to know what you and I know.
Maybe you need to listen to the news when you're in traffic.
Well, again,
maybe
I agree
not.
with that.
Be uninformed.
Or you listen to stuff that's going to take you away from the things that brings down your spirit. And that's unfortunately what most voters are doing.
Let me ask you this. How you want to speak?
No.
Sorry.
Sure.
Because Howard Stern says that he wasn't confident that the country was ready to elect the first female president because he knows, quote, how men talk behind closed doors about us.
I am honestly so tired of both of these political tropes. Let's just stop pretending America isn't ready for a female president when this country's already given the popular vote to a woman in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. And no, Sonny, the nearly 2/3 of this country's total population that still lives paycheck to paycheck does not have the same luxury of being able to dive deep into complicated statistics or political history to make the decision you want. For the average person, their barometer for judging an administration is how secure they feel and how much money they have left in their pocket. Identity politics, like the kind that Sunny Hostin plays, is for people like her who are comfortable in bubbles shielding themselves from having to worry about much else. And it's also true about human nature that people in distress tend to develop a shorter and more immediate vision because that's what allows them to survive. Imagine how aggravated it must be to be talked down to by a party and political culture that otherwise so fixated on lived experience when it comes to racism or misogyny, but not when it comes to the lived experience of millions of people under the daily grind of an economy that has inflated up to 25% in the last 4 years of Biden. But let me know in the comments what you think is driving this sheer disconnect between the Democrats and their base, because it is certainly true that no one from the party itself has done enough introspection that even after a devastating electoral loss on November 5th.